May I please invite on stage Mr. VR Sharma, MD, Jindal Steel and Power, and Mr. Arun Misra, CEO and whole team director, Hindustan Zinc Limited. And of course, Ms. Shrija, requesting you to please join us back. And ladies and gentlemen, why don't we just put our hands and welcome the panelists on the stage? Thank you.
Thank you. We had a great investors conversation, and now we have heads of two large firms right at the heart of sustainability. So we heard from the investors, and now we are going to hear from the doers. And let's hear from them on their path of decarbonization. One thing which was resounding in the investors' conversation really was that net to zero is now the guiding principle on how enterprises are being run. We have Mr. VR Sharma from JSPL and Mr. Arun Misra from Hindustan Zinc, two large companies, and thank you for your sheer energy, time, and privilege with this one. I would like to begin this conversation that how many of us visualize a steel plant? It's always the first image of steel burning in this hot liquefied furnace. And the first imagery that comes to your mind is that how on earth can it be sustainable? Really, right? It's just by virtue of how the metal is produced. But I must tell you this, that steel is the most recycled commodity on earth. We should also know this. It has all the elements of recycling built into it, how it is being produced. But just by virtue of it being so much exposed to heat, the question that comes in, that how are you decarbonizing steel? Yes, Mr. Sharma, I'd like to begin with you and then get on to you. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's an excellent talk, and I'm really delightful that I have been called today here. My colleague, Mr. Mishra, is heading Hindustan Zinc Limited. Often we say that we damage and he protects. So because steel, you know, when we do the overall erosion is very high, the rust formation is very high, and zinc is a very wonderful product which goes hand in hand very cohesively, and it protects the environment, it protects steel from the erosion and rust formation. Now coming back on the steel, I'll give a little background. We produce about 1.9 billion ton steel in the world, and out of that 1 billion ton steel is produced by China. China is not too big a population when we compare with the Indian population. It is only 15 crore difference. And today we have to see that India is at just 118 million ton, and India wants to reach to about 300 million ton by 2030. So today we are just, I would say, 10% or 11% of China, and we want to reach to 300 million ton. You know, the entire universe is going to a big change. The first and foremost thing is we have to see that whether so much of consumption today is correct. This is to be pondered upon. When we see the sustainability, whole world, more than $17 trillion are being spent in next 2 years' time by different governments in the world on stimulus packages. This has given an impetus, and this has increased the consumption of each and everything in the universe. This is a big problem for all of us. So what should we do? I think the first and foremost thing is, before I jump on what steel industry is doing, that is, we should consume less. As a human being, why are we so selfish that this generation, 10 years below my age and 10 years above my age, why are we so greedy that we want to consume the entire universe raw material? We want to consume the entire we want to damage the entire ecosystem. This is to be pondered upon. Each government must work how to consume less. Consume less does not mean that we are depriving people for their needs and wants. No, we have to go for the value-added products. We have to see what we can do and how can we produce less steel, but we still meet out the entire demand and of the universe. Now, the previous session, it was very wonderful that we were discussing on two things. One is the circular economy, the recycling. You are telling that it is recycling steel. Yes, it can be recycled. I'll give one data. Today we produce 450 million ton steel out of 1,900 million ton through the recycling process. In 2026, we'll be producing 650 million ton. In 2030, we'll be producing 850 to 900 million ton steel through the recycling. So this is how the change will be. The world population today is 7.9 billion. This world population, as per the, if you see the straight line graph, then we are seeing that the world population in 2040 or 2047, because Honorable Prime Minister is now discussing that what will happen after 25 years from now. That means on that day, the world population should be about 9.2 billion. But we never know. The situation like pandemic, situation like COVID, situation like any kind of serious illness or disaster or natural calamities that can bring us down. And the over and above, the young generation today, they are not interested in producing children. This is the biggest issue in China. This is the biggest issue in Southeast Asia. This is the biggest issue except for India and Africa. This is an issue everywhere. They don't want to grow their families for more than 3, I mean, husband, wife, and 1 kid. And many places, it is no kids at all. So what will happen? We have to see. Now coming back your question, what steel industry is doing. First of all, we are working today, how can we consume less? How can we produce less number of tons of steel than producing more number of tons of steel and overload the system? That does not mean that the people will not get steel. People will get steel. In car, I'll tell just example. We used to consume about 1,200 kg of steel 15 years back. Today we are using only 800 kg. The day it is EV, we'll be consuming only 400 kg. This is a value addition. Refrigerator. The refrigerator used to be of 165 liter refrigerator used to be made out of 0.63 thickness. And today it is 0.35 thickness. Means more and more value-added products, more and more different kind of steel has come to the market, which is giving better life and which is also easing out the ecosystem. Now, the decarbonization, what we are doing? We are working on hydrogen. We are working as to how to produce hydrogen and how to inject hydrogen in our blast furnaces. How to produce DRI from hydrogen. And for that, India has 2 solutions. One, we go for the green energy and green hydrogen, that is from solar system or even from windmills or from water, the hydro dams. The other is the coal. Coal is always treated as a villain. Coal is treated as a very bad product, but rightly said by, I would say, depicted and rightly articulated by Honorable Prime Minister in America 5 years back, that coal is not unfriendly. Usage of coal is unfriendly. So if you go to coal gasification and then we produce power, we produce steel, we produce ethanol, we produce methanol, we produce fuel like HSD, petrol, naphtha, benzene, then we reduce our dependence. So this is what we are working now. How to produce coal to hydrogen, how to produce green hydrogen and use in our blast furnaces. This is the point we are doing. Thank you. I've taken a little longer time, but it was necessary to explain everything to the great audience.
Thank you, Mr. Sharma. But Mr. Sharma really answered my question in a convoluted fashion. He said that the onus lies on the consumer. So consume less, that is the answer to the question. So instead of answering the decarbonization, which you also answered, that you're going from coal to green and sort of investing in hydrogen, now I come to you, Mr. Mishra. We heard Mr. Sharma's stance on this entire idea of decarbonization of steel. He said the alternative could be less consumption and perhaps more value-added products which consume less of steel. I want to understand from you, in your journey, how are you going on this path of decarbonization?
So let me start by addressing less consumption first. To reduce steel consumption, zinc is the biggest enabler. The more zinc coating you do, the lesser steel you consume, because in India, if you look at railway lines, every year about 15% of the total railway lines need to get replaced just because of corrosion. If you have galvanized railway lines, which Government of India is now looking at, JSPL is looking at making galvanized railway lines, that 15% consumption straightway gets reduced. Now coming to, at the end of the day, how do I reduce my own carbon footprint in production? I know for most of the people difficult to visualize what is there in a steel plant. Even in what is there in a zinc making plant is even more difficult. So its zinc plant is not straight as a steel plant of molten blast furnaces and all that. It's most of the processes are electrowinning process. That is electrolysis process through which you take out zinc as an element. The moment you say electrolysis process, it is highly energy intensive, electricity consuming. And our current about 500 megawatt of electricity that we use for our operations are all coal based. So easiest way, it is easiest way for us, also difficult way for us, that simply replace coal with renewable sources of power 24/7, a combination of renewable solar, wind, and as well as hydro. And that is the only combination that we work. We have finalizing power purchase agreement in another 2 weeks' time, where we will have 50% of our thermal power plant shut down by 2024. We are going for a 300 megawatt connection of 24/7 renewable power. So cut down CO2 emissions by half just by doing that. On the other hand, also reduce active consumptions of water, which are pumping for farther distances from various freshwater sources by increasing internal recirculations more and more. We are also, of course, there are on ESGs not only about electricity and water. There are lots of social and governance side. We are looking at due diligence. We are looking at more diversity, inclusiveness. Hindustan Zinc is coming out with we have redefined diversity. It is no longer gender diversity. We are looking at transgender. We are looking at people with different challenges, different abilities. We are coming out with employment advertisement specifically targeted towards employing transgenders in our various roles in operation. We have gone to underground mines where even women mining engineers, women geologists, women operators are working. So we are on the governance part also we are working out. Also equally important is EV journey in the mining. Entire mining fleet in the underground, we have currently about 700 odd equipment which run in the underground, about 900 meters below ground, which are all fossil fuel based. So my target is, which I have announced, that next 5 years, about $1 billion I will be spending on capex, which will be only for promoting use of EV in the underground mines. This year we are starting with 2 different fleets, one for production, one for utility, completely EV with charging stations underground. And this EV has to be backed up by renewable power, so that it's not that we produce thermal power and then make EV vehicles. So it has to be the full assessment of that CO2 neutral it has to become. And in next 5 years times, I can see Hindustan Zinc will be perhaps 100%, if not close to 100% EV based mining, more than 60% of its power consumption through renewable sources. In 10 years time, it will be 100% renewable sources. I see the future in 5 years time, perhaps even the current petrol pumps will be a thing of the past.
Wow. So you spoke about quite a few things, $1 billion capex, EV journey in the mining, and women mine. That's a pretty interesting initiatives coming to the fore. So what I understand from this panel is that you make and he cleans. Is that what the partnership is going to look like?
Yes, he protects. We damage and he
I would say
protects.
I am the sunscreen lotion for him.
You're right.
Is this how you guys talk with each other when you
Actually,
meet
this is
offline?
because zinc and steel they get together always, and we travel together. The point here is, you have some other question, then I'll reply you.
No, so I think I want to understand that what really is the future of the steel industry then you think? For instance, he mentioned that Shrija, we are going to invest $1 billion capex. So I want to sort of come to that. And first I want to hear from you is the alternative to steel, or the future of the steel industry. How do you see where it is headed?
What we have suggested to Government of India, first of all, because we are now talking sustainability, we are talking on environment, climate change. So our suggestion to Government of India is, let us first lay down the norms that what a steel industry across India should do in times to come. What kind of overall CO2 emission, what kind of pollutants, and what quantity of pollutants one can afford or the country can afford. So this is the first request we have made. And I think Ministry of Environment is working now very seriously that yes, they will redraft the norms. This is one. The number two, each and every steel industry is now working how to utilize hydrogen as a fuel. Once hydrogen comes as a fuel, then definitely the overall CO2 emission will come down. I'll give two examples. One, the CO2 generation today in steel making through blast furnace route is about 2.6 ton of CO2 per ton of steel. And through a DRI route or the DRI and electric arc furnace, that is direct reduced iron and electric arc furnace route, it is just 1.6 tons per ton of steel making. So if we all stop our blast furnaces by 2040 or 2045, then we reduce to nearly 40 to 50% is already reduced. Number two, the world steel production today is 1.9 billion ton. If we bring it down to 1.2 billion ton in next 30 years time, then we will reduce the overall CO2 system to half once again. So the country itself will become I would say, a neutral CO2 country by 2070, as far as the steel is concerned. One more thing I'll tell you. Today, the peak demand is more than 220,000 megawatt on day-to-day basis in India. Out of this 220,000 megawatt, the major contribution is from coal-based thermal power plant. We cannot afford that if the light goes away, we cannot afford to sit here and we'll start cursing the government. For the last 5 months, government has been trying to avoid a blackout situation. And they are, Ministry of Railway and government, they are working to transport coal on pan-India basis. So what we have suggested to Government of India, that let us not put any power plant in any of the states in future. All of these power plants should come on the pit heads, that is at the coal pit heads. Coal should be converted into gas and then integrated gas-based combined cycle power plant should come in the country, where the efficiency levels goes up to 56% as against of 32% today. Each 1% increase in efficiency in power reduces CO2 by 2%. So this will be a biggest change in the history of the country. One more point here. The moment we have coal to gasification and then gas to power plant, pan-India basis, we can supply power, one tariff, one nation theory. One tariff means just at 5 rupees, Kashmir to Kanyakumari, from Gujarat to northeast states, you can get power at just 5 rupees per unit. And this is what we are suggesting to Government of India, that we should now get away from the power plants in Rajasthan, Haryana, Punjab, Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra, and then transport coal all the way. And we're transporting coal through railway. First of all, the dust pollution. The other is when it goes there, the fly ash is a big issue. Where to dump the fly ash? If we convert this coal into gas, gas into hydrogen, gas into ethanol, gas into methanol, gas into power through IGCC route, gas into petroleum products, the olefins, the very, very specialty chemicals, then problem is solved. This is what we feel.
That's a sort of very valid sort of suggestion. And I want to sort of come to you now, Mr. Misra. This $1 billion capex, going green and sustainable, and you also said that in the next 10 years, we'll perhaps become net zero. But that comes at the cost. And the cost is huge, right? So as the company leader, when you're taking the strategic large decisions, on one hand, it is the stakeholder return, shareholder return, and then you have this positive impact. There are these trade-offs which come at the cost. How do you make those decisions?
See, in operating terms or financial terms, cost is something which is imminent. When you talk of anything expenditure for future, you call it investment. For sustainability, we cannot be treating sustainability with cost. It is always an investment for future. When you say an investment for future, you are assuring a long-term sustenance of the organization itself. Whether I want it or don't want it, in another couple of years' terms, world will clamor that we will buy zinc only from those companies whose carbon footprint crosses a particular threshold, that their carbon footprint has to be below this threshold. Currently, the numbers are world best company in zinc, say Tech Resources, is around 800 to 900 kg per ton. I am at 4,000 to 5,000 kg per ton. In China, some of the companies are at 8,000 kg per ton, right? So tomorrow, if the world wakes up and says, I cannot buy zinc from Hindustan Zinc unless you bring it down below 2,000 kg per ton, I will have no option but to face a disaster in my industry. It is better that I invest from now and prepare myself so that I can see a future of next 10 to 15 years while I keep on doing my business without being targeted. Second, all the world over international agreements that are coming, they are all demanding that the all carbon footprint has to be calculated back to your suppliers as well as front end to your customers. So I am supplying to steel companies. Whether they like it or not, very soon they will be transferring, they will be converting to hydrogen, because in India now electrolysis based pure hydrogen supply is becoming a reality. They will pass it on to us that for galvanization we need zinc only with this amount of carbon footprint, otherwise my net steel carbon footprint is not qualifying. In that both cases it is more for sustainability. I have a very peculiar advantage being located in Rajasthan, that I am not in a coal belt, I am not in a coal rich position. For me, buying thermal coal imported as well as transported from far away in India, and compared to renewable power, Rajasthan provides ample space for solar power, ample space for wind, and now the concept is coming that in India in one corner you can have a huge artificially created hydro, solar power generated in say Rajasthan, say wind power generated in Kanyakumari, and this renewable power generates hydro in say Mangaluru, and that hydropower gets transmitted back to Rajasthan. That is the combination that India is going to see. I am betting on that, and by 2024, I will have 300 megawatts of RE power that way, and it is cost effective for me.
Okay, these are sort of very big affirmations coming on the floor. We're having a very interesting chat with both of you. You began by saying that the consumption of steel has to go down. What is your passionate appeal to the government? You spoke about your decarbonization journey and where the future is headed. Now we have heads of steel and mining here in the room, and we also have these young technology enthusiasts, entrepreneurs, regulators. Do you think in 2022, it's a good idea to venture into a steel and mining business? And if I'm an entrepreneur getting into a mining business,
I'll tell you, I am a firm believer in so-called today's innovations, startups, new technologies coming. At the end of the day, you will need a house to live in, right? You will need a bridge to cross the river. You will need a railway line to move, right? You will need some kind of transport mechanism. It's fine that you can imagine that there will be a teleporting your soul or your body to some other place, but it's not going to happen in next 100 years. So those are the basic roti kapda makan of life will remain. The point is, how can I make that green? It's fine that I encourage new startups which are on the negative side of CO2 footprint, carbon footprint, which may be some waste recycling here, some waste recycling there. But the carbon footprint on this side is so huge, you won't be able to negate it by a few startups there, unless these guys on this side who are adding to the carbon footprints themselves come out clean. And that is a requirement. I don't think I can see a world. You will have fiber reinforced plastics, you will have carbon nano chain working, all that is fine. But at the end of the day, you will need railway lines, you will need ships, you will need,
You definitely need steel and aluminum. Look at the wide use and variety. And you said that perhaps the future is in front decarbonization, EV mining, like you said. So do you think there's an opportunity for young upstarts to venture in that direction?
Yes. On EV, absolutely. there is a huge opportunity for startups. There are various options. Suppose I take a EV vehicle today. Lithium is a costly resource and mostly in the control of few countries in the globe. Would you like lithium to be used, lithium battery to be used for all purposes that are required within the car, or you would need it only for driving the motor, but for all the windows movement, all other, spraying on the windscreen, all that can be made by alternative batteries, which can be lead acid batteries, which can be zinc air batteries, which can be aluminum air batteries. And that's where the need of the startups are coming. Can the startups come out with a solution that how do I make a easy battery replacement or easy charging mechanism? Otherwise, very soon, even the charging as a business will get into the hands of 2 or 3 monopolists. This can actually be a very localized startup unit. You are traveling with an EV vehicle from one state to another. You have 20 startups operating on various modes of charging mechanisms across the... And there could be non-contact charging is a space where I would look forward to current generation to work on. What could be that I take my car and place it over a surface and it gets charged without connecting anything.
So the 3 startup parties have already come: lithium, non-contact charging stations, and EV mining. Mr. Sharma, I want to sort of come to you. On the future of the steel industry, let me flip the question to you. If you were to start a steel industry in 2022, what would that mean to you?
It will be a good idea because 300 million ton the country has to reach by 2030. The gap is about 165 million ton today. So this 165 million ton has to be bridged. What is going to happen in the universe? Most of the countries, it will be like settling the world. Today, it is skewed towards China. China is producing 1 billion ton steel. Rest of the world is producing 900 million ton steel. So this skew has to be stabilized. And what will happen in times to come? India will increase the production. Iran will increase the production. Ukraine will increase the production. And some of the European countries will cut down the production. America will also cut down the production, but Latin America will increase the production. Mexico, Costa Rica, Guatemala, Suriname, Brazil will increase the production. India will increase the production. But the countries like China, they will reduce the production. Europe will reduce the production. And then, the whole world will settle. So what I'm telling you that today 1.9 billion ton, if we assume that 1.9 billion ton going to remain even in 2030, that India stands to reach to somewhere about 300 million ton. In India, somebody wants to invest in steel or the downstream industry, processing centers, not necessarily that it is a basic steel making, but even downstream industry, then it is a good business which is likely to be. So is mining. Mining is a good business. Government has already opened the mining, like merchant mining today. It is in a big way. Coal mining, be it coal mining, be it iron ore mining, manganese ore mining, chrome mining, everything has been opened to the world. And this is a good start by Government of India. And I suggest that yes, for next 10-15 years time, if anybody comes in and enter into this particular business of steel and mining, will be a good business.
Okay, I think I can't let go without asking you all. This entire SEBI mandatory requirement for large companies to really say how ESG compliant they are, what has it meant for you all in terms of reporting framework? Is there an added pressure built in the mind? What do you think? I mean, for instance, we're talking about the temptations of greenwashing in the previous panel, right? So when you think about ESG mandatory reporting, how are you thinking about some of these considerations?
If I go first, Hindustan Zinc is already in the Dow Jones Sustainability Index for last few years. We have moved up the rank from 7th to now 5th in the world by sheer disclosures, whether it is carbon disclosure project or in the TCFD, sustainability reports. So disclosure is not a new thing and it has to be done. SEBI mandating it is only makes it that in India also it will be practiced by everybody. Every company, to be fair, has to disclose about its carbon footprint in the right way, auditable way, in a way that it can be validated by auditors as well, must form part of stat audit reports as well. It is a pressure, but if you look at it from citizens' point of view or giving the choice to the customer, am I buying or am I consuming product from the right company? We must provide that disclosure as an add-on to the value that that a company creates as a right step. And I think that would be the practice wherever you go, whether company has a disclosed policy on ethics. Does the company have a disclosed policy on diversity? Does the company have a disclosed policy of non-discriminatory treatment? Similarly, does the company have a disclosed reporting on its CO2 emission? All the good things that you want yourself to be associated with, you also would like to consume product from a company that associates with the values that you live up to. I think I look at it that way, and it's a absolutely right thing to do.
Okay, what about you, Mr. Sharma?
Yeah, I agree with him. First of all, as of now, I won't say there is any. I won't say that there is unreasonable pressure from any of the government authorities or SEBI or anybody. The point here is, as Indian Steel Company and as our association, we have Indian Steel Association or Alliance. So we have voluntarily declared that we will bring down the CO2 emission from 2.6 ton per ton of steel making to 2 ton per ton of steel making by 2028. And by 2032, this has to come down to a level of about 1.8 ton of CO2 per ton of steel making. So these are the figures, data, and the targets taken by the steel industry. There are 6 major steel plants in the country as of now. One is Steel Authority of India, the other is JSW, number 3 is Tata Steel, number 4 is JSPL, where I belong to, and number 5 is ArcelorMittal, and the next is Rashtriya Ispat Nigam Limited. So all these 6 companies, they have set together, we have discussed what is to be done. So part of that is that yes, 2.6 ton as of presently CO2 level, that is per ton of steel making, that has to be brought down by 2030 to 1.8. So this is one. The number 2, how to do it? The first and foremost thing is that we have to produce hydrogen, no matter whether it is from coal or it is from water electrolysis process or through solar. You must have seen about 3 days back, there is news from Mr. Mukesh Ambani's company that they are going to convert pet coke into hydrogen, and that is a blue hydrogen, not a green hydrogen. So we don't mind going to blue hydrogen or green hydrogen. The point here is the target what we have undertaken to the best of the best industry in the world. Today they are at 1.8 ton of CO2 per ton of steel making. We want to reach there, those best numbers, benchmarking by 2032. We will be there at 1.8 tons of CO2 per ton of steel making. So this is a self-regulated discipline by steel industry. And this has been decided already, and we are working very seriously on this.
So self-regulated discipline by the steel industry. Last question from both of you. Elevator pitch. Suppose you are stuck in an elevator with the Prime Minister and you only get 2 minutes with him and you have to make this passionate appeal on sustainability, which perhaps is the problem area and how you're building out the business, or make a dispatch to him. What would that really be?
The biggest area is how to make RE power flow without any restriction across the grid through all the states, and encouraging policy has to be there, because you can't make RE power flow the way thermal power was flowing.
That's very well said, yes.
Should I reply?
Yes, sure.
Your question is if I'm stuck with Prime Minister.
Yeah.
So first of all, nobody will allow me to enter into the lift. So I had to go outside. Number 2, if I'm stuck up with him, then first thing I'll see that how can I save my Prime Minister? And I'll not discuss anything else, that I'll find out. I'll make a phone call to people that please rescue us because Prime Minister is here. Now point number 3. The point number 3 is, if I had to discuss with Prime Minister, then I'll discuss only one thing, and that is what is good for the nation. Let us just not copy the world. We are Indians. We have our own style of working. It does not mean that we will damage the climate. I tell you one thing, very specific data. In whole life, the Indians, what they read, the textbooks, and whatever paper they consume, Americans, they consume that much of tissue papers in a year. So who is more greener? I think Indians are more greener. We do the recycling. We do not throw things outside. Those value system which has come, which has been inherited, which has been given by our parents, that is still working. We are the people who discovered that the plants have lives. Dr. Basu, he did it, and he is a Nobel Prize winner. I think we know it. We know it very well, and we can do it. And we can do it better than many in the world. And yes, steel industry is creating a lot of CO2. And as I told you, a self-regulated discipline that has been already imposed, and we'll bring down ourselves to the best of the best benchmarks in the world very soon.
Okay. Now, quick rapid fire, 3 questions for each one of you. I'll begin with you. So you can hold on your mic and sort of answer the question. Okay, my first question to you really is that one piece of advice, if you were to give to investors investing in sustainability, what would that be?
First is, don't get too carried away only by the startups becoming sustainable. There is a huge load of manufacturing industries, the older lot, who needs to be made younger. That also is a good case for investment. They are generating cash, they will continue to generate cash for you. There is hardly any risk in investing in the old companies for sustainability.
Okay, that's an appeal going out to investors. No harm in investing in old companies. Your advice to Mr. VR Sharma, 3 a.m. call. The steel industry, savior of the steel industry, what would that be?
Yeah, so let's work together on the hydrogen project.
Okay.
You're right, I agree with you.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Sharma, I want to ask you the same question I have for you. Steel industry, the future of steel industry, decarbonization. How can you work together with a company like Hindustan Zinc on this one?
Very simple. First of all, as I told you, the theory of consume less means the life cycle. The life cycle of steel today, suppose it is 15 years, and if I get a Jindal Sport, and if I implement the uses of zinc, then we can increase the life cycle from 15 years to maybe 25 or 30 years. So that means we have consumed less steel. The next is, we have to see together that how his company can produce solar power, because they are sitting in Rajasthan, and how he can help me in transporting this solar power to the eastern belt of the country. We are in Odisha. So this is a big business for each other.
Too much collaboration.
Too much collaboration, yes.
Okay, last, the biggest overhype or the fad you see in sustainability, something which you think is completely overhyped right now.
You see, today, if you see, the whole world is speaking on sustainability. We have to understand one thing. Sustainability does not mean that this is the end of the world, and the nature's tolerance has been tested or gauged. Not yet. But does not mean that we keep on loading the entire universe. We have to take a little sigh of relief. We have to understand it very, very pragmatically. We have to go little carefully in producing hydrogen, in producing green energy, in producing EVs. We have to see that whether the EV manufacturers, they are really here or they are not here. It is a time, because most of the EV manufacturers, they are not here. So we have to find out, we have to see, we have to digest it properly. And we should not jump immediately on this.
Okay, we began this entire conversation on net zero. So both of you have to give me the specific year by which your companies go net zero. Yes, Mr. Mishra.
2050.
2050. I'm not sure how many of us will be there. There.
No, we are becoming by around 2040. We will be reducing about 90%. Last 10% is difficult. That's where some technological changes have to come. I'm hoping that would come.
So 050 for you. What about you, Mr. Sharma?
Same, 2050. We have taken this target of 2050 in our Indian Steel Association, and I'm sure we'll do it. Already the blueprint is on table. and we'll be working very, very seriously, and we are also collaborating with Ministry of Steel and Ministry of Environment. It is a goal what nation has, and in the interest of nation, everybody is working on this particular goal. Our Prime Minister in G20 summit, he declared that we will be by 2070, but steel industry, and I appreciate Mishra ji on HZL and the metal and mining industry. I'm sure all of us will be net zero by 2050.
So it's a long haul, but definitely a step in the right direction. Can we give it up for Mr. Mishra and Mr. Sharma on being so candid and sharing their strategies with us? I'm afraid time is like up badly, but I know you will not get an opportunity to meet with such gentlemen. I can only allow for one question, if there is. Okay, I see a female there. Yes, can we have a question for you?
Can you hear me? Yeah. So you have both have the ambition to produce hydrogen. What is your view if we produce hydrogen by dark fermentation using your biological waste?
Sorry, hydrogen by?
Dark fermentation. It's a microbiological route.
Yeah.
And then we are giving you. But nobody was talking about the green hydrogen in that way. So I am just wondering if somebody provide you with that hydrogen, what is the advantage?
Yes, I will reply you. We are already working on this. There is a company called Lanjatech. This is a company based out of New Zealand, and they are in this particular business, and we have already signed an agreement with them that the microbiology has to play a very vital role. When we have, like, for example, the blast furnace gas, wherever there is a part of CO, finally the last molecule of CO is converted into the carbon value chain, and that is going to be utilized. The another point I'll tell you, what we are working now with Government of India, because we are very near to Bay of Bengal. We want to go for a CO2 sequestration in the Bay of Bengal, about 9 to 10 kilometers below the sea level. And people in North Sea, some of the people, they already done it. And we want to develop the algae parks on the sea. When we have the algae parks on the sea, today, when we convert algae into energy, it comes to about $25 per MMBTU to $30 per MMBTU. But today it is equal to the gas prices in Europe, but tomorrow it will not be, because the gas prices go down. So we are working how to create more and more algae parks so that we can utilize this algae as a source of energy tomorrow. So I think this was your question. Hope I have replied to you.
Your recommendation for companies who are under the Startup India in the EV space and the renewable space, how do they pitch for this business to Hindustan Zinc, because that's a very large company?
Correct. So we are looking at the companies which are now coming to us to pitch. We are looking as hassle-free battery replacement, because in underground mining you can't take an equipment down for hours to take the battery. Either equipment should have its own capability of dismantling its own battery through the operator operating and picking up a battery and fitting it itself. So there are, like Sandvik has already given the prototype where the equipment goes, picks up a battery, discards its own battery, fits it up and comes back. So we are looking at that solution. Second, equipment that can use the gradients to recharge itself, and that recharging is faster. That is conversion of your kinetic energy into electrical energy. And also looking at OEM agnostic charging facility. Like every equipment designer is now designing that my equipment will come with my charger. But same thing the mobile operators did for some time, and slowly now your charging is becoming OEM agnostic. So you should have common charging station charging any vehicle that comes in its way. So those are the kind of innovations that we are looking for. And madam, on your hydrogen is, in steel plant, hydrogen is more important as a reducing agent. For me, hydrogen is more important as a storage solution. So I am looking at RE power, electrolysis, producing hydrogen cell, and hydrogen cell being transported. So I don't need electricity line for transporting energy.
Thank you, Mr. Misra, thank you, Mr. Sharma, and thank you, Ms. Agarwal, for such an insightful session. Thank you so much. Thank you. And now, ladies and